A lot of people that move to San Antonio make the same costly mistakes, but before they notice it, they are already stuck. Choosing the wrong neighborhood can cost you tens of thousands of dollars and dozens of hours per year stuck in traffic. And you overlook a couple small details and you can be out $3,000 per year right away, basically. I have lived in San Antonio my entire life. I absolutely love it here, will not ever go anywhere else, and I have helped hundreds of families just like yours move here to San Antonio. And in this video, I'm going to break down 14 key factors that separate the smart buyers from the people that regret it 2 years later. And that very last point really matters here in 2026, so make sure you stick around all the way to the end. So number one is that San Antonio has what I would consider like these invisible growth lines, basically. So essentially what you're looking at is that individual areas of town, although you may look at them as say the far west side of San Antonio, the east side of San Antonio, the north side of San Antonio, the south side of San Antonio, as just kind of one general market, it is not at all the case, because individual neighborhoods and individual pockets within each of these areas can grow very differently, right? So take the far west side, for example. You've got a ton of growth out there, lots of new construction, lots of development going on out there. You've got lots of stuff that's happening out towards Castroville, tons happening off Petrenko and Calabria Road, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But you also look at areas that are kind of in neighborhoods that are within that area, right? So if take the far west side, for example, Riverstone and West Point is one of D.R. Horton's fastest selling communities in the entire country. There were hundreds of homes sold here last year alone. But you have other pockets of neighborhoods within the far west side, especially dealing with some of these new construction areas where they're trying to sell and compete with the new construction homes like at Riverstone, and they're not able to do it. So you have homes that are sitting on the market and they are tanking in prices. So you may buy a house brand spanking new in one neighborhood for $250,000 and then try to sell it in a year and you can't sell it for $210,000. That's a big hit just in a year's time. And so you have these price depreciations showing overall in this area because of this, even though in some neighborhoods like Riverstone that are selling really, really well still to this day. You also got to look at the school district specifically too. So if you're looking in, like, say, Innertown, Alamo Heights area, right? So you could be in Alamo Heights, Terrell Hills, Olmos Park, like that area where Alamo Heights Independent School District is covering, and your price point is going to be significantly higher. But you go literally right down the street and you're still in that same area. Looks great, everything's very, very appealing, but the price point could be cut in half for that specific house. So you may think you're getting a great deal, but you're outside of the school district that maybe you needed to be in to really help that appreciation long term, and it may make you stuck in that house with not as much appreciation, especially if you're making a short-term move in the near future. The second factor is all about traffic. So you can find a house that you absolutely love. You go take a tour of it. You drove there. It was fine getting there, but you looked at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock on a Wednesday and you just absolutely had to have that house. Made an offer, bought the house, moved in, get your new job downtown, and now you realize, oh great, I have to drive down Calabria Petrenko Road every single day to get to work, and it is taking me about 30 minutes to get just a couple of miles to go through all these traffic lights and all these other people that are trying to do the same thing I am. That is a big problem if you're not paying attention to it. Now, a lot of people maybe don't care about that as much, and they're okay with being in these neighborhoods. It takes a longer commute, but if that's not something that you're prepared for, then that's a problem. And there's a lot of road construction in and around San Antonio that's going to affect your commute as well. So we've got a $1.4 billion expansion going on with Loop 1604 right now. It is going to make things so much better, because one of the worst areas to drive is that Loop 1604 area between 281 and I-10. Okay, so that area, and again, under construction right now, is a nightmare, even more so than it was before. But in the coming couple years, once they get that finished up, it's going to make things so much better. When you're looking at overall traffic numbers, in 2024, San Antonio drivers spent on average 39 hours per year in traffic, which was actually an 11% increase year over year. You look at that, that's overall 21st as far as the worst amount for the entire country. So when you look at the big metro areas, it's not as bad compared to, like I said, some of those bigger places that a lot of you guys are coming from. Some of the other bad areas that you always have to consider is definitely going through downtown. 35 going through downtown and some of the intersections down there, 410 going from 281 to I-10. It really, 410 anywhere during rush hours is not fun. And then, like I mentioned already, on that far west side, Calabria, Petrenko Road, even 90 out there kind of coming into Alamo Ranch area, like that whole section out there gets to be just a nightmare because there are so many people in so many neighborhoods out there that if you're having to commute in at a typical, rush hour time, like there's going to be a ton of people between school traffic and work traffic getting out that are just clogging up the roads, and you're literally crawling through those areas. So something to pay attention to, and make sure that maybe you have a back road, or maybe if you don't have to commute at those crazy rush hour times, and maybe that'll make things a lot easier to get into one of those better neighborhoods that you're looking at. Now, one quick note, if you are seriously considering moving to San Antonio, I would love to have a conversation with you guys. Myself and my team at the Life and SATX Home Group, we help people like you on a daily basis figure out their move here. So whether you're looking at moving here in 2 days or 2 years, we've helped hundreds of people just like you move to San Antonio, and would love to be a resource for you. So you can schedule a call with us at any point in time. Our information is down in that description below. You can also go to lifeandsatx.com/YouTube and fill out the information there, and we can get you on a call and get you scheduled to talk with somebody on the team as soon as possible. Now, this next part is really interesting, and it really factors in considering where you're buying, because although a lot of these areas may look very similar, they are not. They are very, very different. San Antonio is absolutely flooded with new construction homes and neighborhoods everywhere, all sides of town, north, south, east, west. Okay, they are they have new construction options. Okay, now the difference is the price points in each of those areas and the types of neighborhoods that are being built. So you look at some pockets where they are building just as many homes as they possibly can. They're focusing on affordability. They're focusing on speed. They're turning houses and finishing these houses, I'm not kidding you, in a month or two. Okay, so you have to really take into consideration the quality of some of these builds. And although you may be getting into a house that is very affordable, make sure that you are really considering all of your other options, okay? Because some of these builders are not looking out for your best interest. They are trying to get you in that house, get that deal closed for them, and they are on to the next one. And they could care less after the fact. Now, you've got other master plan communities that are done very, very well. They're developed very, very well. They have really good amenities. They have the highest quality builders, and those are the ones that you're trying to find, okay? So there's going to be some, maybe even though they're selling, hundreds or thousands of homes in the San Antonio area, maybe they're not the best builder to look at. And I'm not going to be saying any names, but you can probably guess who I'm talking about. But when you look at the builders, in the neighborhoods such as like Esperanza, Veramendi over in New Braunfels, Mayfair over in New Braunfels, Riverstone at West Point even, D.R. Horton has done a really, really good job over there, and neighborhoods like Stillwater Ranch and Paternco Ranch, you get some of these higher priced builders as well, in addition to some of the high quality median level homes, right? Those 200s to 250s and even 250 to 300s, like there are good builders in those price ranges, but you have to be understanding that not all builders created equal, right? So now next up is something that a lot of people always talk about, but not a lot of people really truly understand, and that is the property taxes in San Antonio. Now, when you look at overall numbers, they're definitely higher, okay? For the median price home in San Antonio, you're paying on average $2,962 more than you would be in a typical home nationwide. Overall, the city limits is definitely where you're going to have the highest property tax rates, okay? So once you get out of those city limits, you start to reduce and get to see some of the benefits of having a lower property tax rate. So for example, the city of San Antonio is about a 0.54%, and they're just city tax rate, okay? So that's 0.54 that you can decrease by going outside the city limits. Now, when you get out of city limits, you're going to get other things that come into play, and that's why it's hard to say, all right, this area has this tax rate, this area has this tax rate, this area has this tax rate. It doesn't quite work that way. Everything varies, and it can depend by neighborhoods, it can depend by the school district, and it will depend by the county and the city, and it has all these different factors. So there's not really one good way to really itemize and separate out every single tax rate for this location, this location, this location. It's all varies. There's places like Kendall County where you have property taxes as low as like 1.3% in some areas. Same thing over in Comal County. A lot of the places in Comal County, as long as you're outside the city limits, are around like 1.5%. You get down into Guadalupe, Wilson County, you're kind of in that 1.7% range. Bexar County, you're in that like 1.8 to 2% range, depending on where you're at and what part of the county you're in. When it comes to the savings that you get on your primary home, the homestead exemption is something that not a lot of people know about. For one, 100% disabled vets No matter what the house is, if it's your primary residence, you get a 100% break on your property taxes, no property taxes at all. For your homestead, for anybody else, right? If it is your primary residence, you can apply for that homestead exemption. It reduces the taxable value of your home by $140,000 on these school taxes. You also have the over 65 exemption, which increases that even more. You also get the benefit of the over 65 where it freezes your property taxes to where they can't ever increase. Outside of that, with the homestead exemption, you can get a maximum of 10% year over year increase if the market does boom again and we get, that big crazy price increases. So when you look at the overall, just on average, again, with that $140,000 decrease in the value, the taxable value on the school portion of your taxes with that homestead exemption, you're looking at anywhere between maybe $1,400 to $2,000 per year savings, just because your school portion of your taxes for the school districts is what the majority of these property taxes are going towards. So that's where you get your biggest decrease in overall taxes. And it's also one of the reasons why they put that as far as your homestead exemption goes. Now let's talk about something else that is a little bit more in your favor than property taxes. And that is the fact that San Antonio is actually one of the most stable job markets in the state of Texas. Most of this has to do because of the military presence and the healthcare presence that San Antonio has. That's our two biggest industries. You also have a very, very large increase over the last few years of government cybersecurity work. So San Antonio is becoming one of the hubs for cybersecurity in the entire country. There's a lot of different people that are moving here for that industry. And as we all know, in most cases, government work typically stays pretty stable for the most part. There's not a whole big dip and drop whenever there's layoffs going through, like you see in the tech industry, like you see up in Austin or over on the West Coast in Silicon Valley, right? So overall, Joint Base San Antonio employs 82,000 people directly, which indirectly services about 211,000 jobs in San Antonio. So a huge chunk of the overall job market in San Antonio comes from Joint Base San Antonio. You've got overall about 100 cybersecurity companies that call San Antonio home, and you've got more jobs coming too. The Defense Health Agency is considering relocating from Virginia, which would bring an additional 3,300 jobs to San Antonio. And that healthcare and biosciences industry plays a huge role with over 180,000 employed in the San Antonio area. UT Health San Antonio currently has about 9,700 employees and plans to add about 1,500 high-wage workers over the next few years. You also got the University Health System, which is currently building more hospitals, and so they're going to be expanding drastically and bringing in more people. Boeing's facility at Port San Antonio also has a few hundred openings for their jobs, so that shows that they're growing as well. And in November of 2025, San Antonio's unemployment rate was at a flat 4.0%, which is lower than the 4.2% rate that the state of Texas saw. And in fact, we added 12,100 jobs in that time period where they were looking at that rate. So you can see that San Antonio's job market is growing well. Next up, we're going to talk about another area. So that is downtown. And downtown isn't just like, okay, here's one pocket, right? Here's the Riverwalk, that is downtown. It's not quite like that. Other than what's right there at the Riverwalk, and that is kind of the main touristy area. That's where you've got the Alamo, that's where you've got the Majestic Theater, that's where, right across from the Riverwalk is where you have Hemisphere Park, which is the Tower of the Americas. Alamo Dome is down there. But you also have just a little ways north, you have Pearl District, which is kind of its own unique little area in and of itself. So you look at the Pearl District, it's connected by the Riverwalk. San Antonio River goes through there as well, so you can get all the way down from one to the other. You've got a lot of really nice apartments in that Pearl District area in this big courtyard with beautiful restaurants, beautiful shopping, just lots of really cool artsy, kind of history is there as well. Then you also have south of the downtown Riverwalk area, you've got Southtown, King William District, Tobin Hill, all those different things that kind of make the entire, I guess, downtown area. This is kind of a smorgasbord of different areas within downtown San Antonio. And that doesn't even talk about the future growth of what San Antonio is going to see, especially once that San Antonio Spurs Arena gets built right there at Hemisphere, and the rest of this Project Marvel, development continues. The investable areas in and around downtown are going to grow drastically. There's going to be a lot more opportunity and a lot more desire to get properties in that area, and it's going to make I think the additional development, commercial development and residential development, blow up even more, because there's going to be so much more opportunity with all those extra things that are being added. And now, one of the things that I know a lot of you guys do not overlook, because it is Texas and everybody just thinks Texas is just this blissful blistering desert wasteland. And that is talking about the heat, but it is not nearly as bad as you might think. Okay, so a lot of you guys, especially coming from places like California or maybe, areas of the country that don't have as much humidity, that you may think, okay, we're coming to Texas, it's going to be so humid, so miserable there. And I think you're just thinking of Houston for one, but the coast is also really bad for obvious reasons. But San Antonio doesn't have the humidity that a lot of other places have, and especially not as much as people think. Now, if you're south of San Antonio, you do see a little bit more of that humidity because you're getting closer to the coast and a little bit more flat out there, a little bit more dry in those areas too. So it does get to be that kind of hot desert feel in some spots because it's very sandy, very dry, right? But you get up north, get into that hill country area, you get a lot more grain up there for one. Those hills and kind of those west winds that come through those hills, you get some of those nice storms in the spring. Now, granted, some of those can bring hail with us, but it brings that nice cool breeze coming from the west side of Texas, and you get a little bit more of that nicer, just overall cooler feel to it. It's a few degrees difference up in Bernie that it is in San Antonio, one for elevation change, but also too just because of being in that hill country area. And it makes things a lot more bearable when you guys are coming here and expecting it to be blistering, miserable 105 degrees all summer long. You're in those areas where it's mid-90s most of the time. One of the things I always recommend when it comes to people that are coming from areas that are a lot cooler, especially, and they've never lived in Texas or in a southern state before, is you need to come here and visit for about a week or so over the summer. Okay, it gets you a better feel for what that heat is really like and if you can bear it at all. I've unfortunately had some folks that have come here and they moved here sight unseen, couldn't really wait to make that move. And they did not enjoy those first summers and it ended up leaving not long after. So that's not a situation that I want you to be in, because you move somewhere and move there immediately after that, you're losing a lot of money on those moving expenses. And it just, takes a lot of stress. Now, next up is HOAs. HOAs are not things that people really love to talk about, and they just want to try to avoid them altogether in most cases. But unfortunately for most of you guys that are trying to find an area that have no HOAs, San Antonio's HOAs are becoming the norm, not the exception. So pretty much all of these new construction neighborhoods have an HOA of some kind, whether smaller or more extravagant. The more amenities that you have, the more an HOA is going to play a role. But a lot of these neighborhoods are just looking at an HOA to kind of keep property values up, and you're only paying a few $100s per year, not per month, per year, for that benefit of having somebody helping make sure that your neighbor is not trashing his place and bringing down your property value. Now, the HOAs that have all the amenities and everything to take care of, those are going to be a lot higher. Places like Esperanza, where you're looking at like $1,000, $1,200 a year, so $100 a month or so, but you get all these amenities right there in your neighborhood. And you've got some locations that are a little bit higher than that, but very, very rarely do you get them over $1,000 per year. The norm is kind of that $600 to $1,000 a year, that kind of range in there, even for the neighborhoods that have the nice amenity centers with the pools and everything else. That's kind of the typical range for the HOA fees. So it's not as bad as I know a lot of people are expecting. It's not hundreds of dollars per month by any means. Texas is also one of the most friendly places whenever it comes to homeowners. So even though the HOAs may have a lot of restrictions in your neighborhood, when it comes to finding you and sending you all kinds of stuff, like, they have to give you the opportunity to correct your mistakes. And you can go look at all the different Texas HOA regulations to confirm some of those different things. But just know that the state of Texas has your back in most cases, especially against some of these HOAs that may be overstepping. Now, non-HOA properties do exist, but you're definitely going to be looking at a lot less new construction. I know very, very few new construction homes that you're going to be able to find a non-HOA community with. Even the custom homes that are building on like acre lots or so, most all of those have an HOA of some kind. So just expect that if you're moving here. And now keep this in mind too, and this goes with any neighborhood, any area in the entire country. Okay, if an area is super affordable, or you see a house that is listed for way lower than what you expected it to for that area, there is definitely a reason. The vast majority of the time, it's because that house itself is either dilapidated or needs a lot of work or just got some kind of problems going on with it. However, when you're looking at areas that are on that super low price range, compared to everything else in San Antonio. I mean, San Antonio is a very, very affordable area, but you got to make sure you're researching everything across the board. One thing I'll say is I can't really talk about crime rates on this channel. Just not something that I'm allowed to do, but I can point you in the right direction. Go to the San Antonio Police Department crime blotters. You can also go to Neighborhood Scout. Niche.com has some stuff for crime data. You can also look at the school districts. Okay, so txschools.gov is a great resource that I love to go to. Niche.com has good ones. You can also go to greatschools.org, although I don't love that one very much. I prefer niche.com or txschools.gov for my school, district ratings and kind of what I reference whenever I'm talking about the higher rated districts on this channel. But the districts themselves, even if you may not have kids, that's a big factor when it comes to resale. Okay, so because a lot of people, especially at that lower price point, if you're buying in that $200,000 or less, or even that lower $200,000 to mid $200,000 price range, the people that are looking at your house when you're ready to upgrade to that, maybe your forever home down the road, or maybe you're moving somewhere else. People that are looking at your house, a lot of times are going to be families that have kids, and that's something you really got to consider, making sure that if you're in a district that is very, very poorly rated, it's going to be harder to sell that home for sure. Another huge point to talk about is that San Antonio is basically not walkable. Okay, so you can find a few small places, like if you lived in one of those apartments at the Pearl District, great walkability. Okay, you don't have to go anywhere else but the Pearl. You could probably focus on that and not look anywhere else. If you got a higher budget and you want to live in one of those really nice condos downtown, probably a lot more walkable. Okay, Alamo Heights, even though it's closer to the downtown area, is still not very walkable. You've got to walk long distances to get to places. So unless you are right there on kind of those main corridors and those main hub areas like downtown, like the Pearl District, Southtown, Tobin Hill, King William District, for example, like those are going to be a little bit more walkable. You're going to need to have a car. Okay, San Antonio is a driving city. There's not a large public transit situation going on. We've got VIA for all the the busing that kind of goes in and around San Antonio, but it is not very prevalent. Okay, most people around here drive. They have their own vehicles and they drive on their own, commuting to work, commuting to school, whatever it is. It is just not as common to have. There's no rail system or anything. Like there's a public transit, like I mentioned, is kind of lower end. So you really got to make sure that you're expecting to drive whenever you move here. Okay, there's a lot of people that I talk to that ask that question, and I got to break it to them the easy way of like, hey, you just got to make sure you have the budget for a car if you're going to move here. It's really no other way around it. And tying back into one of our previous points, and one of the things that I really love about San Antonio more than anything else is that we are more predictable, more stable, less volatile. Okay, that means that we typically don't have these huge real estate booms when it comes to pricing. Even looking back in 2008, this is the example I always like to give everybody. 2008, when we had the worst housing market crash, San Antonio's price point as far as their houses go never really dipped. The total number of sales decreased drastically, but we had a flat line essentially whenever it came to the prices, and then they immediately started going back up in about 2011, 2012. It was essentially a stalemate, while everywhere else around the country, some areas dropped as low as as much as 50% on real estate prices. We didn't really see that. A lot of that has to do, again, with the stable economy that we had. Okay, so we have military, we have healthcare, education. We have always been very, very consistent when it comes to our economy and never had these huge upswings and downswings. And that's honestly a lot of reason why you see more affordable prices here, because we just don't go through the roof on appreciation. San Antonio over the last year, whenever you look at just overall kind of market appreciation, we typically see a slightly lower rate than what you see in either Austin or Dallas or Houston, right? But you look at Austin and kind of what they experienced over since 2022 to last year, basically, and prices dropping by as much as 40% in some areas and 25% on average across the board. I mean, we didn't see anything near that big of a drop. And in my opinion, that also helps for you guys that are looking at maybe your entry-level homes to get in here, buy that $250,000, $300,000 home, save up, pay down your mortgage, work on, paying off your debt and being ready to move up to that maybe $350,000, $400,000, $500,000 house as your forever home. Okay, in not having to worry about buying a $250,000 house, and then your dream home is maybe a $400,000 house, and then in 5 years that $400,000 house is now a $700,000 house and you can't afford it. It's much less of a chance that something like that's going to happen. It allows you to plan more predictably for your future whenever you move to San Antonio. Now, when it comes to looking at the outer edges of San Antonio, this is where most of the people are kind of starting to look at the new construction homes, because that's where everything is pretty much growing. And it's kind of redefining where the city starts and where it ends, right? So it's really making these individual pockets in their own little city centers, right? So you look at the far west side of San Antonio, that's like its own city within itself. If you live on the far west side, like that's where you're at. Kind of similar things that happened up on the north side. Look at Stone Oak. Okay, Stone Oak is like its own little city center, right? Everything is kind of conglomerated within Stone Oak. Same thing, you look at Chavano Park. Obviously, that's its own little city center. Of course, all these little sections of San Antonio, right, that have been, historically created that kind of isolate each individual area of San Antonio. And it's like this across the country, but more specifically with the new construction, it's making a big difference, especially out on that far west side. Additionally, you can also look at the areas between Northeast and New Braunfels. That whole corridor on 35, before, you'd leave San Antonio, you were very clearly leaving San Antonio. There was just kind of more open rural land for a while. You get to New Braunfels, all right, you're in New Braunfels now. Now it's kind of all merging together. So that line between San Antonio and New Braunfels is starting to blur a little bit. And eventually that's going to blur even more. And you're going to basically have these two big conglomerates that are kind of growing together. And that's where that San Antonio New Braunfels Metroplex, why it has its name, right? That's our San Antonio Metroplex, is the San Antonio New Braunfels Metroplex now. Same thing's happening going north on I-10 going towards Boerne. That area south of Boerne, all along I-10, that whole corridor is just exploding. You've got a lot of growth that's happening right there at Fair Oaks Ranch, even going up into the south side of Boerne. Obviously, Boerne's having a good amount of growth. A lot of people that are wanting to move there. Look at Esperanza, look at neighborhoods like Shoreline Park, Corley Farms, and then you've got other neighborhoods just kind of scattered in and around Fair Oaks Ranch. You've got a lot right there at Balcones Creek. So you've got lots of different options whenever it comes to new construction, and that whole area between San Antonio and Boerne, similar to New Braunfels and San Antonio, that line is kind of getting blurred a little bit now. One of the most important things that happens whenever you move to San Antonio, and when you really feel San Antonio and once you've lived here for a while, in my opinion, is something that a lot of people, probably you guys watching this, may hate that I'm even talking about this stuff, but San Antonio, in my opinion, feels a lot more local. You do feel that kind of cultural community. It is not so spread out that you're just kind of isolated from everybody else in the Metroplex and in the city. You look at Dallas and Houston, they're just so huge. The Metroplex is just so huge that you really don't have really any true identity. I mean, you definitely have the culture of being a part of Houston, people saying they're from Houston, they love saying they're from Houston, but what I see is that San Antonio is much more close-knit, okay? It has that small town feel, even though it is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that is growing every day, but that small town feel is still there. I still feel that kind of slower pace, that more, controlled city, the more controlled atmosphere, the stability, like I mentioned already, really gives San Antonio a very, very unique vibe and a unique cultural aspect to it. Plus, just the culture in and of itself. You look at the Hispanic culture of San Antonio, like that is hard and true today as it ever has been, okay? You got the Riverwalk, you got the Alamo, you got San Antonio Missions, you got the Spurs, and everything that everybody loves to watch about the Spurs. A lot of the people that move here, if they appreciate that part of San Antonio, those are the ones that truly fall in love with San Antonio and never plan on leaving. But in my opinion, a lot of that stuff can change in the very near future, and kind of here's where that perception is going. So you want to move here before San Antonio really changes and you can really see the growth that is coming. I mean, we've talked about it a lot on this channel with the development that is happening. Project Marvel, the billions of dollars that are being funneled into making San Antonio a better place, between the airport, between all the development downtown, a new home for the Spurs, new potential eye-catching, world-renowned architectural feats that could potentially come to San Antonio from this Project Marvel experience that we're going to see over the next decade. There's so many things that could change about San Antonio, but in my opinion, in a good way. Despite the rising momentum, the growing job market, the stability that we've seen, lower interest rates coming in the very, very near future, and have already started to see an impact in the real estate market in San Antonio. San Antonio is still much more affordable than places all around Texas. San Antonio is the most affordable big metroplex out of all of the big players in Texas, and Texas is going to be a place that people come for years and years to come. Strong industry, strong job market, strong business-friendly environment, great tax environment. All of those things are going to bring people to Texas, and San Antonio is going to grow, but it's going to remain that kind of stable core that it's always been. From everything that I'm seeing, that's what I'm expecting. 2026 is going to be a very strong transition year, in my opinion, to where we see really what happens with the direction of San Antonio. And I hope you guys are along for the ride. So if you have enjoyed this video at all, would love for you guys to hit that subscribe button. But also, more importantly, if you have any questions about moving here, buying or selling, whether you're locals or moving from out of state, myself and my team would love to be a resource to you guys. So feel free to reach out to us, and me or one of the persons on my team can have a conversation with you guys and help you to understand what it truly means to move to San Antonio and how we can best serve you to help with that transition. So all the information is down in that description below right there, guys. Schedule a call at the link. Go to the lifeinaSATX.com/YouTube link as well. Reach out to us directly through email, phone number is there as well. So you guys have any questions whatsoever, would love to help you guys with your move. And if you would like to know a little bit more about why San Antonio grew out instead of up, that video is right here, and it is to another video where it talks about the future of the brand new multi-billion-dollar developments that are coming to San Antonio. So would love to see you guys, and until the next one, guys, we'll see you there.